woman walked in and asked if the aisle that changes you was still active. She said it like she was asking if we still stocked milk. The automatic doors whispered shut behind her, letting in a brief breath of night air that smelled like rain and asphalt. It clung to her coat, dark, damp wool, and then dissipated into the store's usual stale blend of refrigeration, dust, and something faintly sweet that I could never quite place. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, steady and low, like a throat clearing itself. I stood behind the register, one hand resting on a stack of lottery tickets I wasn't supposed to touch. There were no other customers. There were never many after midnight, but tonight had been especially empty. Even the road outside looked abandoned, no headlights, no passing shadows. "I'm sorry," I said. She didn't repeat herself right away. Instead, she walked forward, her shoes making soft, deliberate sounds against the linoleum, too measured, like she was counting steps. When she reached the counter, she rested her fingertips on it, not quite touching the surface, hovering as if she expected it to react. Her eyes flicked past me, over my shoulder, toward the aisles. "You heard me," she said. I asked if it's still active. Something in the way she said still made my stomach tighten. "We don't have anything like that," I replied, forcing a small, polite smile. "This is just a convenience store." She looked at me then, really looked, and I had the strange, immediate sensation of being evaluated for something I hadn't agreed to. "You're new," she said. "I've been here 3 months." New enough. Her gaze drifted again, slow and searching, until it settled somewhere behind the shelves. Aisle 7, I realized. The far back corner. Snacks and seasonal items. Right now it was mostly overstock, discount candy, expired promotional packaging, things that didn't sell. At least, that's what it was supposed to be. "You didn't answer my question," she said. "I did," I said, more sharply than I intended. "We don't have." "It changes," she interrupted. "It won't be labeled. It never is. But it's always somewhere near the back. Slightly off from where it should be." Her words pressed into me in a way that felt familiar. Not like I'd heard them before, but like I'd almost thought them once and then stopped myself. "I think you've got the wrong store," I said. "No," she said softly. "I don't." She turned away from the counter before I could say anything else and began walking toward the aisles. "Hey." I stepped out from behind the register. "Ma'am, if you're looking for something specific, I can help you find it." "I'm not looking," she said, not turning around. "I'm confirming." The store seemed quieter as she moved deeper into it, like the hum of the lights was receding rather than following. I hesitated, glancing toward the door. Still closed. Still no one outside. Then I followed her. There are 7 aisles in the store. Or there are supposed to be. I've counted them 100 times during slow shifts, pacing from one end to the other just to stay awake. Candy, canned goods, household items, refrigerated drinks, snacks, toiletries, and the last one, the one at the back right, miscellaneous overflow. But that night, as I walked behind her, something felt misaligned. Aisle 3 seemed longer than usual. The shelves stretched farther, stocked with the same rows of instant noodles repeating more times than I remembered ordering. Aisle 4 felt narrower, forcing me to turn slightly sideways as I passed. I told myself it was just fatigue. Late shifts did that. The brain smoothed over details, then exaggerated them. The woman didn't hesitate. She moved with quiet certainty, her head tilting slightly as she passed each aisle, as if listening for something behind the products. When she reached the back, she stopped. "There," she said. I stepped up beside her. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Just the familiar shelves, half-empty boxes, dusty packaging, a clearance bin on the floor. Then I blinked, and the aisle shifted. Not physically. Not in a way I could point to. But the space between the shelves deepened, like a corridor extending beyond what geometry allowed. The fluorescent light above it flickered once, not off, just different, its hum dipping into a lower pitch. "That's not," I started. "It is," she said. "It's active." A cold sensation spread through my chest, slow and deliberate. "We should call someone," I said. "Management, They won't come, she said. And even if they did, they wouldn't see it. Not yet. Not yet. She turned to me again, and this time her expression softened slightly. You haven't been chosen, she said. But you're close. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, she said gently. You've felt it, haven't you? The way the store isn't quite the same at night. The way things rearrange. The way you forget small details that should matter. I opened my mouth to deny it. But I couldn't. Because I had noticed. The way products would shift positions between restocking. The way the back aisle sometimes felt farther away than it should be. The way I'd occasionally catch myself staring down it, certain something had moved just out of sight. I thought I was just tired, I said. You are, she said. But that's not the reason. She stepped into the aisle. The air changed immediately. It wasn't colder or warmer. It just felt thicker, like breathing through a memory instead of oxygen. The smell shifted too, that faint sweetness becoming more pronounced, almost floral, but decayed at the edges. Wait, I said, grabbing her sleeve. If this is some kind of hazard, you shouldn't just. She gently removed my hand. You shouldn't come in unless you're ready, she said. For what? To be corrected. The word landed wrong. Corrected how? She didn't answer. Instead, she took another step forward. And the aisle deepened again. The shelves seemed to stretch, their contents blurring slightly at the edges. Labels lost clarity, colors smearing into one another like wet paint. Stop, I said. She paused. You've been here before, I said. Haven't you? A small smile touched her lips. Yes. What happened? She turned her head, just enough to look back at me. I left, she said. Relief flickered through me. So you're fine. You're. No, she said. I'm not. The smile didn't fade, but it changed, tightening, as if it was being held in place rather than felt. It doesn't give things back, she said. It only replaces them. A low, almost imperceptible sound moved through the aisle then. Not quite a whisper, not quite a hum. Something between. I stepped back. We need to close the store, I said. Now. You can try, she said. But it won't matter. Why not? Because it's already aware of you. The sound deepened. And then I saw something move between the shelves. Just a flicker. A shape where there shouldn't be one. I froze. Did you see that? I whispered. Yes, she said. What is it? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out and picked up an item from the shelf. Or tried to. Her hand passed through it. The box remained where it was, but its image distorted, rippling outward from the point of contact like a reflection disturbed by water. It's not physical, she said. Not in the way you expect. Then what is it? She turned fully to face me now. A version, she said. Of what you could be. Of what you were. Of what you refused. The sound sharpened, resolving into something closer to voices, overlapping. Indistinct. I took another step back. I'm calling the police, I said, though I didn't move. You won't, she said calmly. Why not? Because you want to know. She was right. That was the worst part. Despite the fear, despite the wrongness of everything, there was a pull, a quiet, insistent curiosity threading through my thoughts. What happens if I go in? I asked. She studied me for a moment. It starts small, she said. You'll notice things about yourself that feel improved. Sharper. Clearer. You'll remember things you forgot. You'll feel more aligned with who you think you should be. And then it decides that who you think you should be isn't enough. The voices grew louder. I leaned slightly, trying to see deeper into the aisle. And that's when I saw him. Me. Standing 3 shelves down. He was facing away at first, his posture slightly different, straighter, more confident. His uniform was cleaner, his hair neatly combed in a way I'd never bothered with. Hello, I called. He turned. Our faces were almost identical. Almost. His expression was settled. Certain. There was no hesitation in his eyes, no uncertainty. He smiled. And it felt like looking at something that had already made every decision I was still avoiding. That's not. I stepped back again. That's not possible. It is here, the woman said. The other me took a step closer. Then another. The distance between us didn't seem to change. You see, she said. It offers you a version that fits better. I don't want that, I said quickly. Not consciously, she said. The other me raised a hand. Mirroring me. Except I hadn't raised mine. I looked down. My arm was still at my side. Slowly, I lifted it. He didn't follow. He was already ahead of me. Panic surged. I'm leaving, I said. I turned. The aisle behind me wasn't there. Not gone. Just farther away than it should be. The entrance stretched, distant and dim. You can still go, the woman said. But it gets harder the longer you stay. Why are you here? I demanded. If you know what this does, why come back? Her gaze flickered to the figure in the aisle. Then back to me. Because it didn't finish, she said. Something moved behind her. I didn't see it clearly. Just a distortion, a shift in the air. And it doesn't like unfinished things. The voices rose, overlapping into something almost coherent. Fragments of words. Better. Closer. True. The other me was closer now. Too close. I could see the differences more clearly, the subtle changes. His eyes were steadier. His skin smoother. Even his posture felt optimized. What happens if it replaces me? I asked. You don't notice, she said. That's the point. And you? I noticed too late. Her smile returned, brittle and thin. I left with enough of myself to know something was wrong. But not enough to fix it. The other me reached out. His hand stopped just short of mine. Waiting. Don't touch it, she said sharply. I pulled back. What do I do? I asked. She hesitated. Then, quietly, nothing. The word echoed. Nothing. Don't engage. Don't accept. Don't reject. Just remain. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't need to, she said. It just needs to prevent it from completing the change. The voices shifted. Displeased. The aisle seemed to contract slightly, the shelves pressing closer. The other me's expression changed. The certainty cracked. Something impatient crept in. You're resisting, the woman said. It doesn't like that. Good, I said, though my voice shook. The air thickened further. Breathing became harder. The other me stepped closer again. This time, the distance did close. He was right in front of me. Close enough that I could see the tiny differences in our faces, the slight asymmetry corrected, the faint scar on my chin gone. He leaned in and whispered, I'm easier to be. The words slid into my mind, not through my ears. For a moment, just a moment, I believed him. How much simpler it would be to let go of all the doubt, all the hesitation. To become something, resolved. My hand lifted again, not by choice. Drawn. The woman grabbed my wrist. Stay with yourself, she said, her voice tight. Even if you don't like what that is. The other me's expression hardened. The aisle trembled. The shelves warped, their contents blurring into indistinct shapes. The voices surged, louder, sharper. And then, everything snapped back. The aisle was normal. The shelves were solid. The fluorescent light hummed steadily overhead. I stumbled back, gasping. The woman released my wrist. It's done, she said. I looked around. Aisle 7. Just aisle 7. No distortion. No depth. No other me. It stopped. I asked. She shook her head. No, she said. It finished. A cold dread settled into me. What do you mean? She stepped back, studying my face. You stayed, she said. You didn't accept the change. Relief flickered. Then I'm fine. She didn't smile. That wasn't the only option. The words landed slowly. Then what? The automatic doors at the front of the store slid open with a soft hiss. Both of us turned. A man walked in. He paused just inside, looking around with mild confusion. Hello, he called. His eyes landed on me. Hey, he said. Quick question. He glanced past me, toward the back. Is the aisle that changes you still active? My breath caught. The woman closed her eyes. Now you understand, she said softly. I looked at the man. Then back at her. What is this? I whispered. You didn't get replaced, she said. You got assigned. The realization spread through me like something cold and final. I turned back to the man. He was waiting, expectant. The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. You heard me, I said. I asked if it's still active. I froze. That wasn't what he had said. But it was what I had heard. The fluorescent lights hummed. The store smelled faintly sweet. And somewhere, deep in the back, aisle 7 waited, patient, unfinished, ready to correct the next version of someone who didn't quite fit. The store's trash can was filled with items I hadn't sold, but recognized. At first, it was just a feeling. A quiet wrongness that settled somewhere behind my eyes, like trying to remember a word that never quite comes. I stood there behind the counter, one hand resting on the register, staring at the black plastic bin beside the lottery display. The lid was tilted open, just enough for the fluorescent light above to spill into it, revealing a clutter of wrappers, crushed cups, and cardboard sleeves. Nothing unusual, except I knew, without knowing how, that I hadn't sold those things. The store was empty. It had been empty for almost an hour, save for the soft, continuous hum of the coolers lining the back wall and the intermittent flicker of a ceiling light near aisle 4. Outside, the town sat in that peculiar kind of rural stillness where even the wind seemed reluctant to move. No cars, no footsteps, just darkness pressing gently against the glass. I stepped around the counter. The floor tiles were cold through my shoes, slightly tacky in places where soda had dried and been poorly mopped. As I approached the trash can, a faint smell reached me, aged plastic, stale sugar, something faintly chemical, like old packaging that had been sitting too long in a forgotten storage room. I crouched down. On top of the pile was a candy wrapper. I picked it up carefully, as if it might dissolve. It was for a brand I hadn't seen since I was a kid, bright colors faded into something duller, the logo slightly off, like a memory that had been copied instead of recalled. I turned it over in my hands. The plastic felt thicker than modern packaging, less flexible, with a faint brittleness at the edges. I hadn't stocked this. I knew our inventory. Small town stores don't get many surprises, just the same deliveries, the same brands, the same rotating stock that never really changes. And this hadn't been in any shipment. I dropped it back into the trash. It landed softly, too softly, as if cushioned by something beneath. I leaned closer. There were more. An empty soda bottle with a label I didn't recognize. A crushed carton of cigarettes from a brand that had gone under years ago. A paper receipt, curled and yellowed at the edges. My chest tightened. I reached in and pulled the receipt out. The paper was warm. That was the first thing that struck me. Not hot. Just, not cold, like it should have been. As if it had only recently been printed. The ink was slightly smeared, but legible. I scanned the items listed. Milk, chips, a brand of soda we didn't carry. And then something else. Something I didn't understand. It wasn't a product name, not really. Just a string of letters that almost made sense, like a word caught halfway between languages. I checked the date at the top. Tomorrow. I stared at it for a long time. The hum of the coolers seemed louder suddenly, filling the silence with a low, steady pressure. The light above flickered once, briefly dimming before returning to its usual pale glow. I folded the receipt and slipped it into my pocket. I don't know why. Maybe because it felt like proof of something I hadn't fully grasped yet. Or maybe because part of me already knew I'd need it later. The rest of the store looked normal. That's what made it worse. I walked the aisles slowly, running my fingers along the edges of the shelves. Everything was where it should be. The chips were arranged by brand, the drinks lined up in neat rows behind the glass doors, the freezer humming with a steady, mechanical patience. But there were small things. Things that didn't quite fit. A box turned slightly the wrong way, like someone had picked it up and put it back without caring how it looked. A gap on a shelf where I didn't remember selling anything. A faint scuff mark on the floor that hadn't been there before. I told myself it was normal. Customers move things. They change their minds. They leave items in odd places. But there hadn't been any customers. Not for an hour. I stopped in front of aisle 3. Something was different. I couldn't pinpoint it at first. Just a vague sense that the spacing was off, that the shelves weren't quite aligned the way they had been earlier. I stepped closer. The labels looked unfamiliar. Not entirely. I recognized the brands, the colors, the shapes. But there was something off about them, like seeing a photograph that had been subtly altered. I picked up a bag of chips. The logo was correct. The design was not. It was older. Or maybe newer. I couldn't tell. The colors were slightly different, the font a little sharper. I turned it over. The expiration date was years away. Too far. I frowned and put it back. When I looked up, the aisle seemed longer. Not dramatically. Just enough to make me hesitate. I took a step back. The store hummed around me, steady and unchanged. Get a grip, I muttered. My voice sounded flat in the quiet. I turned and walked back toward the counter. The bell above the door rang. I looked up. A man stepped inside, brushing his hands together as if shaking off cold. He wore a jacket that looked too thin for the weather, his hair slightly damp. Evening, he said. Hey, I replied automatically. He wandered toward the aisles without another word, his footsteps soft against the tile. I watched him for a moment, then glanced down at the register. The numbers glowed faintly, unchanged. Normal. Everything was normal. I told myself that again. A minute passed. Then two. The man didn't come to the counter. I frowned and leaned slightly to look down the aisles. He stood in front of aisle 3. The same aisle. He was staring at the shelves, his head tilted slightly. Find everything okay? I called. He didn't respond right away. Then, without turning, he said, Where do you keep the glass bottles? My stomach tightened. What kind? I asked. The ones with the metal caps, he said. The old ones. We don't carry those anymore, I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he turned. His expression was confused. Yeah, you do, he said. I bought one here last week. No, I said. We only have plastic. He looked back at the shelf. Then back at me. His confusion deepened, but there was something else in it too. A faint unease, like he was starting to question something he hadn't realized was fragile. Huh, he said. Weird. He set something down on the shelf. I hadn't seen him pick it up. Then he walked to the counter. I'll just grab something else, he said, reaching for a bottled drink from the cooler near the register. I rang him up without speaking. When he left, the bell chimed softly behind him. The store felt quieter after he was gone. I waited a few seconds. Then I walked back to aisle 3. The item he'd set down was still there. A glass bottle. Dark green, with a metal cap. Condensation clung to the surface, catching the light in tiny, uneven patterns. I reached out and touched it. Cold. Real. My hand trembled slightly as I picked it up. The label was unfamiliar. But it felt right. Like something I should remember. I carried it back to the counter. And dropped it into the trash. I didn't want it on the shelf. That was the only reason I could come up with. It didn't belong there. Neither did anything else in that bin. I stood over the trash can again, staring down at the growing pile of wrong things. The smell was stronger now. Aged plastic, stale sugar, and something else, something softer, almost organic, like paper that had been handled too many times. I shifted a few items aside. That's when I saw it. A keychain. Small. Metal. Slightly scratched. My breath caught. I reached in and pulled it out. It was mine. Or at least, it had been. A simple design, a faded logo from a place I used to go as a kid. I hadn't thought about it in years. I'd lost it at some point, though I couldn't remember when. I turned it over in my hand. The scratches were familiar. Not just similar. Exact. A cold wave moved through me. I didn't throw this away, I whispered. The store didn't answer. Of course it didn't. But the silence felt heavier. Like it was waiting. I slipped the keychain into my pocket beside the receipt. My hand brushed the paper. Still warm. Things started to shift after that. Not all at once. Just gradually. The shelves didn't stay the same when I looked away. I'd turn my head, and when I looked back, something would be slightly different. A product moved, a gap filled, a label changed. The receipts became stranger. Items with names I couldn't pronounce. Quantities that didn't make sense. Times that hadn't happened yet. And the trash. It filled faster. I wasn't throwing anything away. But it kept growing. I found more things I recognized. A pen I'd lost last month. A receipt from a gas station in a town I hadn't visited in years. A photograph. That one stopped me. It was small, slightly bent at the corners. I pulled it from the trash with shaking hands. It showed me, standing behind the counter. But the store looked different. Older. The shelves were arranged in a way I didn't recognize. The lighting was dimmer, the colors muted. And me, I looked tired. Not just late shift tired. Something deeper. Something worn down. I turned the photo over. Nothing written. No date. No explanation. I slipped it into my pocket. My hand was starting to shake. Around 3 a.m., the lights flickered. Not unusual. They did that sometimes. But this was different. The flicker lingered. A stutter in the brightness that made the shadows stretch and contract in uneven pulses. The hum of the coolers deepened, dropping into a lower register that I felt more than heard. I stood behind the counter, gripping the edge. The trash can was full. Overflowing now. Items pressing up against the lid, forcing it open. I didn't want to look. But I did. Something at the top caught my eye. Fabric. I reached in slowly. And pulled out a shirt. My shirt. The one I was wearing. I looked down. It was still on me. But the one in my hand was older. Faded. The fabric worn thin at the seams. A small tear near the collar. I swallowed hard. I didn't throw this away, I said again. The words felt useless now. The realization crept in, slow and inevitable. These weren't just discarded items. They were replaced ones. Versions that had been used, lived in, worn out. Versions that no longer fit. My chest tightened. I looked at the trash can. At the pile of things that had once belonged to me. Two others. Two versions. The smell was stronger now. Not just plastic and sugar. Something human. Faint. But unmistakable. I stepped back. No, I said. The word sounded small. Insufficient. The lights flickered again. Longer this time. The store dimmed. And for a moment, I saw something in the reflection of the glass cooler. Someone standing behind me. I spun around. No one. But the reflection lingered in my mind. The posture. The shape. It had been me. But not quite. The bell above the door rang again. I turned. A woman stepped inside. She paused, just inside the threshold, as if adjusting to the light. Then she looked at me. Hey, she said. Quick question. My stomach dropped. Her voice was calm. Casual. Too casual. Do you still take returns? I stared at her. What? I said. For things that don't fit anymore, she said. Even if you don't remember buying them. The air felt thick. I didn't answer. She smiled faintly. Thought so, she said. Then she glanced at the trash can. Her smile widened. Busy night. I followed her gaze. The trash shifted. Something near the top moved. I felt it before I saw it. A subtle shift in the pile. A shape forming. Don't, I said, though I wasn't sure who I was talking to. The woman took a step closer. You should look, she said. I shook my head, but my eyes were already drawn to it. Something was pushing up from beneath the layers of discarded things. Plastic crinkled. Paper tore softly. And then, a hand. My hand. It emerged slowly, pale and familiar, fingers flexing as if testing the air. My breath caught in my throat. The rest of it followed. A version of me, climbing out of the trash. He looked wrong. Not grotesque. Just incomplete. Edges blurred slightly, like a memory that hadn't fully settled. He met my eyes. And smiled. Relief flooded his expression. Finally, he said. His voice was mine. But thinner. Worn. I thought I'd be stuck in there forever. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. The woman watched quietly. You see, she said. It's not just things. The other me stepped fully out of the trash. Bits of plastic and paper clung to him, then fell away. He looked at his hands. Then at me. You're still here, he said. Confusion flickered across his face. That's not right. The store hummed. The lights flickered once more. And the trash can shifted. I felt it then. A pull. Subtle at first. Then stronger. Like gravity changing direction. The other me frowned. No, he said. Wait. The pull intensified. Not on him. On me. My feet slid slightly on the tile. I grabbed the counter. What's happening? I gasped. The woman's expression softened. It's sorting, she said. Sorting what? She didn't answer. The other me stepped forward, reaching for me. Don't let it, he started. The pull surged. The world tilted. And in that moment, I understood. The trash wasn't collecting things. It wasn't even collecting versions. It was deciding which ones didn't belong anymore. Which ones were excess. My grip slipped. The edge of the counter dug into my fingers. The other me lunged. Too late. The pull yanked me backward. Toward the trash. The smell filled my lungs. Plastic. Sugar. Something human. The last thing I saw was him, standing where I had been. Whole. Steady. Belonging. As I fell into the dark, shifting pile of everything that had been discarded, I realized the truth wasn't that I had found something I'd lost. It was that something had finally found a way to get rid of me.